The dojo was alive with murmurs and whispers, the kind that promised mischief and arrogance. Every eye turned toward the entrance, where a solitary figure appeared, calm, composed, and moving with a grace that seemed effortless. A group of Japanese fighters exchanged smirks, their confidence dripping like oil. "Watch this," one of them whispered with a chuckle, nudging his companion. "Let's show this foreigner who's really in charge here." They believed it would be easy. Just another outsider, another martial artist who thought he could step into their world and make a name. They imagined themselves towering above him, laughing, mocking, and shaming him in front of everyone. But Bruce Lee's presence alone seemed to shift the air. There was a quiet intensity in his gaze, a subtle energy that made the bravado of the dojo feel suddenly fragile. His movements were slow, almost casual, but every step carried purpose. As he walked further into the room, the chatter dimmed. The fighters thought he was nervous. They had no idea. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that they were about to face a force so precise, so ruthless, and so skilled, that the dojo would never forget this night. It was a crowded evening at the Tokyo dojo. The warm glow of the lanterns reflected off polished wooden floors, while the smell of sweat, incense, and anticipation hung in the air. Students and spectators gathered on the sidelines, eager to witness the skills of the dojo's elite. They had trained under Master Nakamura for years, perfecting strikes, blocks, and combinations that made them the pride of their school. Tonight, however, something unusual was about to unfold. Master Nakamura himself, tall and imposing, strutted forward with a condescending grin. His eyes scanned the room, filled with pride for the fighters he had molded. But he also carried arrogance, the kind that comes from decades of unquestioned authority. "Step forward, foreigner," he called, his voice echoing through the wooden beams of the dojo. "Let's see if your skills are more than just talk." From the back of the room, a hush fell over the crowd. Everyone turned to see who had dared to challenge the legendary master and his students. And then they saw him. Bruce Lee walked in, calm, composed, and unassuming. No dramatic entrance. No entourage. No loud proclamation of skill. Just a man in jeans and a simple shirt, moving with an effortless rhythm. His jacket slipped off his shoulders, and with smooth precision, he rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms toned by years of training and discipline. Every eye in the dojo followed his movement, some out of curiosity, others out of disbelief. His eyes were steady, sharp, and focused, yet his expression remained calm, almost serene. His breathing was measured, controlled, a quiet contrast to the tension that crackled in the room. The very air seemed to react to his presence. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't intimidation. It was simply an undeniable energy that drew attention, respect, and perhaps even fear. The Japanese fighters exchanged glances, smirks returning to their faces. "This will be easy," one whispered to another. "Just another foreign martial artist. Let's embarrass him." Their laughter was low and scornful, their confidence absolute. As Bruce stepped closer to the center, the whispers grew louder. "Who is he? Is he serious?" someone asked. Others nudged each other, speculating on his abilities. None of them imagined that he had trained under multiple masters, that he had studied diverse martial arts, or that his speed, precision, and understanding of combat were unmatched anywhere in the world. Master Nakamura raised his hand, signaling his top student to step forward first. The fighter bowed lightly, arrogance hidden behind his discipline. The crowd leaned in, anticipating a swift and humiliating victory over the foreign challenger. Bruce's stance was subtle, almost casual, yet every subtle movement spoke volumes. He didn't flinch, didn't overreact, didn't even blink excessively. He was calm, like water, deceptively gentle, but capable of immense power if provoked. The contrast between him and the smug fighters was almost tangible, like watching a storm gather silently on a bright day. Before the first strike, Bruce's gaze swept across the room. Not a hint of fear, not a trace of anger. Just clarity, precision, control. Every muscle, every nerve, every breath was in harmony. The dojo seemed to pause, the chatter fading as the anticipation mounted. At this moment, let's engage with the viewers. Drop a comment below. Globe showing Asia Australia. Where are you watching from? Are you seeing this unfold with us? And don't forget, if you love legendary stories of skill and respect, make sure to like and subscribe. There's more epic action coming your way." The Japanese fighters laughed again, thinking it was merely theatrics. Some whispered among themselves, questioning if he had any real skill. But the truth was far from what they imagined. Bruce Lee's calm demeanor wasn't empty. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had mastered his craft so completely that every movement, every breath, and every glance carried authority. Master Nakamura's eyes narrowed, his pride and curiosity battling within him. He had heard tales of foreign fighters, of martial artists traveling from distant lands to challenge his dojo, yet none had ever impressed him. Could this be different? Could this unassuming man truly hold skill equal to or beyond the dojo's best? The room held its collective breath, the tension thick like a tightening rope. The moment had arrived, the first confrontation, the first test. The dojo's air was electrified with anticipation. Every spectator, every student, every fighter, they all knew this was more than a test of skill. This was a test of respect, of humility, and of mastery. And in that still, expectant moment, Bruce Lee simply stood in the center, calm and ready. The quiet before the storm. The first challenger stepped forward, chest puffed out, eyes gleaming with arrogance. His smirk was wide, overconfident, the kind that comes from believing you are untouchable. He had trained for years under Master Nakamura, mastering every technique, every strike, every defensive move that the dojo had to offer. Tonight, he thought, he would make this foreigner a laughingstock. Bruce Lee's stance was subtle, almost casual, as if he weren't even aware of the man lunging toward him. His shoulders relaxed, his hands slightly raised, but there was an energy, a tension, beneath the surface, like a coiled spring, waiting to release. And then the challenger attacked. A flurry of strikes, fast and furious, aimed to intimidate. But Bruce moved like lightning. Every motion was precise, every step measured, and in a single, fluid strike, he intercepted the attack. The challenger's balance was broken, and with a subtle twist and a push, he was sent sprawling to the polished wooden floor. Gasps filled the dojo. Students and spectators alike froze, their mouths open in disbelief. Some fell back a step, others reached instinctively for their phones to capture the moment. The dojo, once brimming with arrogance and chatter, fell silent. The second fighter, equally confident, stepped forward. He had witnessed the first fall but believed it to be a fluke. Maybe Bruce Lee had caught him off guard. Surely, he could be defeated. He charged. A spinning kick, fast and sharp, aimed at Bruce's side. The strike never connected. Bruce's movements were elegant yet lethal, a dance of timing and precision. With a quick sidestep, a subtle block, and a counter that seemed almost effortless, the second fighter tumbled onto the floor beside the first. Bruce didn't shout. He didn't celebrate. There was no arrogance in his movements, no unnecessary flourish. Every strike, every block, every motion was controlled, calculated, and devastating in its simplicity. To an outsider, it may have looked casual. To a trained eye, it was perfection in motion, lethal, efficient, and utterly unmatched. The dojo's atmosphere shifted dramatically. Where there had once been confidence and smugness, now there was fear and disbelief. The students who had been laughing moments ago now clutched their fists nervously. Even Master Nakamura's grin had faded, replaced with a subtle tightening of the jaw and a sharp narrowing of his eyes. Whispers spread among the spectators. Who is this man? How is he so fast? I've never seen anything like it." The room buzzed quietly, the tension palpable, as each fighter who stepped forward was met with the same fate: controlled precision, speed unmatched, and strength hidden behind calm composure. Bruce's expression remained neutral. His eyes scanned the room, noting each movement, each hesitation. He was a storm disguised as calm, a force that demanded respect without shouting, without intimidation. It was a lesson as much as it was a demonstration: skill without ego, power without aggression, dominance without arrogance. By the time the third fighter attempted his attack, the dojo had collectively realized the truth. Bruce Lee was not just another martial artist. He was a master, and every move he made was a lesson in control, strategy, and respect. The challengers fell one by one, not through brute force, but through precision, intelligence, and unmatched skill. The dojo, once filled with laughter and arrogance, now held only awe, fear, and respect. For the first time that evening, the students understood, the fight was never just about strength. It was about mastery, control, timing, awareness, and humility. Bruce Lee embodied all of it, and every eye in the dojo could see it clearly. The stage was set for what no one in the room would forget, a confrontation that would leave a lasting mark, not in bruises or broken bones alone, but in lessons of skill, discipline, and the quiet power of respect. The dojo was silent, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was tense, like the air just before a storm breaks. Every student froze in place, their minds racing to comprehend what had just unfolded before their eyes. Those who had been confident moments ago, laughing at the foreigner, now felt their arrogance crumble. A shiver of disbelief ran through the room, touching every corner, every spectator. Some whispered nervously to one another, trying to make sense of the situation. "Who is this man?" one muttered, voice barely audible. Another asked, "Is he really just a foreigner? Or is he something else?" Their words were shaky, unsteady, betraying the sudden fear that had replaced the bravado they had carried moments earlier. Others fumbled, trying to recall the fragmented stories they had heard over the years. Tales of a legendary fighter from overseas, someone who had trained with the best and challenged masters around the world. Some dismissed the rumors at first, thinking them exaggerated. But now, seeing Bruce Lee move with unparalleled precision, speed, and calm control, the whispers of legend became reality in their minds. Even the master of the dojo, Master Nakamura, felt a sudden tightening in his chest. His usually steady, authoritative face turned pale. Pride, ego, and reputation, all built over decades of teaching, training, and victories, had been quietly challenged in mere seconds by a man who had walked in without fanfare, without proclamation, and without intimidation. He had expected to demonstrate superiority, to showcase the power of his students and his teachings. Instead, he was confronted with a level of mastery he had never encountered, one that made his own skills, and those of his elite students, seem ordinary by comparison. The students and spectators exchanged glances, their wide eyes betraying a mix of awe and fear. Every movement of Bruce's body seemed deliberate, a perfect combination of timing, awareness, and controlled power. He didn't need to shout, to strike with force, or to taunt his opponents. His calm composure alone radiated authority, silently teaching the room a lesson that words could never convey. Bruce adjusted his stance slightly, a subtle movement, barely noticeable, yet it carried the weight of unshakable confidence. He was poised, calm, and entirely unshaken, as if the chaos, the fear, and the disbelief around him meant nothing. Every breath was measured, every glance precise, and yet there was an intensity in his eyes that told everyone watching, he was ready, always ready. The students struggled to breathe normally, their hearts racing, their minds scrambling to process the skill and control they had just witnessed. Some whispered warnings to one another, "Do not challenge him, he's unlike anyone we've faced." Others just stared, frozen in place, caught between fascination and fear. Even those who had been skeptical, those who had laughed at the idea of a foreign fighter walking into their dojo, now felt a knot of anxiety tighten in their stomachs. What they had dismissed as a casual challenge had turned into a revelation, a stark reminder that true mastery cannot be judged by appearances, nationality, or reputation alone. Master Nakamura stepped forward, his voice steady but tinged with unease. This is not ordinary," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. His students looked up at him, waiting for guidance, reassurance, something familiar to anchor them. But even he could not hide the acknowledgement of Bruce's skill, the truth that had become undeniable in these past few moments. Bruce Lee remained silent, letting the reactions around him speak louder than any words could. He was not there to intimidate, to boast, or to humiliate. His actions, his mastery, and his calm demeanor communicated everything. Respect, control, and precision were his language, and the dojo, now hushed and attentive, understood it perfectly. A few students instinctively took a step back, some even bowing slightly, unsure whether it was out of fear, respect, or both. Their whispers continued, though quieter now, more thoughtful. "He's different, unmatched. This is someone we should learn from, not challenge." Bruce's eyes scanned the room, taking in the reactions, noting the hesitation, the awe, and the fear. Every movement, every breath, every glance was deliberate, teaching a lesson without a single word spoken. The dojo, which had been a stage of arrogance and competitiveness, had transformed into a classroom of humility and respect in an instant. Even as the tension lingered, a strange sense of calm began to settle over the spectators. The awe they felt was no longer just fear. It was admiration, recognition of skill, mastery, and control that transcended simple combat. Bruce Lee had not only defeated the challengers, he had changed the atmosphere entirely, leaving the room to grapple with the realization that true power is silent, measured, and precise. By the time Bruce adjusted his stance again, preparing for what might come next, it was clear to everyone, students, spectators, and even Master Nakamura, that the dojo would never be the same. That calm, unshakable presence, combined with unmatched skill, had left an impression so powerful that it would linger in their memories for years to come. In the midst of whispers, astonished glances, and racing hearts, Bruce Lee stood unshaken. The dojo, once filled with confidence and arrogance, had become a chamber of awe and respect. And in that silence, the lesson was clear. Mastery is not in showing off, nor in loud demonstrations of force. It is in precision, in control, in the quiet strength that commands attention without demand. The dojo had fallen into an almost reverent silence. The echoes of crashing bodies, the gasps of fallen challengers, and the sudden stillness all hung in the air like a tangible tension. And then, finally, Bruce Lee spoke, calm, his voice measured, carrying the weight of authority that demanded attention without raising a hand. "I came to learn, not to fight. But arrogance has a price." The words, simple as they were, rippled through the dojo. Each syllable was deliberate, yet they carried the force of truth. Every student, every fighter, every spectator felt the weight of those words settle heavily on their shoulders. They weren't just a warning, they were a lesson. In the back of the dojo, one of Bruce's old students stepped forward slightly, a subtle nod barely visible but full of understanding. The recognition sparked something in the room. Whispers began to spread again, this time tinged not with fear but with astonishment. The realization hit the crowd like lightning. This was Bruce Lee, the man whose name alone carried stories of mastery, dedication, and revolution in martial arts. Some people in the room instinctively tried to recall what they had read, heard, or imagined. Bruce Lee, the legend who had trained under multiple masters, who had created new forms of combat, who had changed the world of martial arts forever, and yet, here he stood, in jeans and a simple shirt, silent and unassuming. The contrast was jarring. The myth had materialized, and it was even more formidable than any story had described. The master of the dojo, Master Nakamura, stepped back, a complex mixture of shock, awe, and humility spreading across his face. For decades, he had been the pinnacle of skill and authority in this dojo. For decades, he had trained the best, instilled discipline, and commanded respect. And yet, in the span of mere moments, Bruce Lee had shown him a level of mastery that transcended even his highest expectations. The other students, who had once laughed, who had once been sure of their dominance, now looked at him with eyes wide and minds racing. They had faced a man who moved faster than thought, whose strikes were precise, whose control was unshakable. The humility and quiet strength Bruce embodied contrasted so sharply with the arrogance that had filled the dojo just minutes before. One of the challengers who had been sent sprawling rose to his knees, trembling, not in anger but in awe. I've never seen anything like this," he whispered, voice barely audible. Another fighter pressed a hand to his chest, trying to calm the rapid beat of his heart. Each realized that Bruce's skill wasn't just physical. It was a combination of intelligence, discipline, awareness, and respect, a force that could not be matched by mere strength or bravado. The spectators, who had come expecting a show, now understood they were witnessing history. Some quickly reached for their phones, eager to capture the moment, though none of their recordings could truly convey the presence, the energy, or the silent authority Bruce exuded. It wasn't just skill. It was mastery in motion, a living demonstration of everything martial arts could aspire to be. At that moment, Bruce looked around the room, scanning the faces before him, students, challengers, and even Master Nakamura himself. There was no anger in his eyes. There was no need for dominance. There was only awareness, control, and the quiet authority that comes from having mastered oneself before mastering any opponent. "I did not come to prove myself," he said softly, addressing both the challengers and the spectators, "but arrogance often invites its own lesson. Every strike I delivered, every movement I made, was a reminder that skill without humility is incomplete. Respect is earned, not assumed." The room remained silent, the weight of his words sinking into every mind present. Slowly, the whispers began anew, not of doubt or arrogance, but of awe. "This is Bruce Lee," someone said softly. Another added, "He is unlike anyone we've ever seen." And then, for the first time, Bruce allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to cross his face. Not a smile of triumph, but one of understanding, a recognition that the lesson had been received, that those who were humble would carry it forward, and that respect had been earned through action, not showmanship. At this moment, it's time to engage with you, the viewer. Comment below globe showing Asia Australia. Who do you think would win in a fight? Bruce Lee or a modern MMA fighter? Let's see who has the boldest opinion. And don't forget to subscribe to catch all these legendary stories and witness more moments where mastery meets humility. You won't want to miss what comes next, as the story continues to unfold, leaving lessons and awe behind in every dojo and training hall it touches. Bruce Lee's presence lingered in the room long after the physical confrontations had ended. It wasn't just the strikes or the speed that mattered, it was the way he carried himself, the way he commanded respect without demanding it, and the way he reminded everyone present that true mastery begins with control of the self. By the time he finally moved toward the back, a path cleared instinctively, and even the master of the dojo bowed his head slightly, acknowledging a truth he had long suspected but never truly realized. Bruce Lee was more than legend. He was a living embodiment of discipline, respect, and power. The dojo had changed in those few short minutes. What began as arrogance, doubt, and mockery had been replaced with awe, humility, and the recognition that mastery is silent, precise, and unstoppable. Bruce Lee had revealed not only his skill but also the philosophy behind it, that greatness is measured not by showy demonstrations but by discipline, focus, and the respect one commands quietly. The dojo was thick with silence. Even the faint creak of the wooden floorboards seemed loud in the stillness. Every student, every challenger, every spectator was frozen, still processing the astonishing display of skill and control they had just witnessed. The energy in the room was no longer charged with arrogance or ego, it had shifted. A profound humility had settled over everyone present, leaving them to grapple with what true mastery really meant. Master Nakamura, the proud head of the dojo, took a hesitant step forward. For years, he had been revered as the pinnacle of martial discipline, his students taught to emulate his authority and strength. But now, confronted with the quiet power and perfection of Bruce Lee, he felt the weight of his own limitations. Slowly, deliberately, he bowed. "Bruce, forgive our ignorance," he said, voice low, sincere, carrying both humility and a hint of awe. The words were heavy, layered with respect, and acknowledged a truth that no one could deny. They had underestimated the man before them. Bruce nodded, his expression calm, unshaken, almost serene. There was no gloating, no triumphant grin, no satisfaction in victory. He had not come to humiliate, to show dominance, or to assert superiority. He had come to demonstrate a principle, that true skill is not measured by strength alone, but by the mastery of oneself and the respect one shows to others. True skill, Bruce said, his voice steady and clear, is not shown in arrogance. It is shown in restraint, respect, and self-control. The students listened, hanging on every word. Each syllable seemed to reverberate through the walls, imprinting itself on minds that had, moments ago, been brimming with pride and confidence. Some nodded slowly, realizing for the first time that martial arts was not merely about strikes, blocks, and victories over opponents. It was about discipline, awareness, and character. Even the challengers, once so certain of their prowess, now looked at him differently. Their muscles still tensed, their hearts still raced, but the fear had softened into respect. They understood that the lesson Bruce Lee had delivered extended far beyond combat. It was a lesson in life, that strength without humility is hollow, and that mastery without respect is meaningless. The dojo remained quiet, but in that quiet, a transformation was taking place. Students who had laughed moments before were now introspective, contemplating how they had approached skill, pride, and rivalry. They realized that the path to true mastery was not found in dominating others, but in understanding oneself. Master Nakamura, still bowed, gestured toward his students. "From today, let this be a reminder," he said, voice resonating with sincerity. "We measure our skill not by how we defeat others, but by how we control ourselves and honor those we face." Bruce Lee's eyes swept the room, acknowledging the subtle nods, the thoughtful glances, and the quiet understanding that had spread across the dojo. He did not speak further. Words were unnecessary. The lesson had already been received, loud and clear, stronger than any shout or display of force could ever have been. The students slowly began to step forward, one by one, bowing respectfully. Their movements were deliberate, showing the humility that had replaced their earlier arrogance. Even those who had initially mocked or doubted him now showed the same respect, recognizing that Bruce Lee's presence had changed not just their understanding of martial arts, but of life itself. A few of the younger students glanced at one another, eyes wide with awe, whispering, "He didn't just defeat them. He taught us something greater." The realization spread like wildfire, reinforcing the idea that skill, true skill, always carries a moral dimension. Bruce turned to the master, acknowledging the bow with a subtle nod. No words were exchanged. In that gesture, the respect, understanding, and quiet triumph were mutual. The dojo, once a place of ego and competition, had transformed into a space of reflection, humility, and learning. As Bruce Lee moved toward the exit, every eye followed him. There was no clamor, no chaos, just a profound awareness that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The message lingered in the air: restraint, respect, and self-control are more powerful than any strike. The dojo, silent yet vibrant with newfound understanding, had been changed forever. Bruce Lee's demonstration was not merely a lesson in martial arts. It was a lesson in life. And in that quiet, resonant silence, the power of humility and mastery spoke louder than any clash of fists could. The dojo had returned to its quiet state, but it was a quiet unlike any before. It wasn't the calm that follows a normal training session. It was a stillness born of awe, reflection, and a profound understanding that something extraordinary had just occurred. Every student, every challenger, and every spectator remained in their places, minds racing, hearts pounding, and yet minds calm enough to absorb the lesson Bruce Lee had imparted. Humility isn't weakness. That was the first truth the room had learned. To see Bruce Lee move, to witness his strikes with precision and restraint, was to understand that true power does not need to be flaunted. Strength isn't measured by how many opponents you can overpower, nor by the volume of your confidence or your ego. True mastery lies in knowing when to act and when to hold back, in controlling oneself before attempting to control others. Confidence isn't aggression. Many had entered the dojo that night believing that aggression, loud voices, and boastful movements were synonymous with skill. They had thought that showing off would intimidate, that dominance was proven in spectacle. Bruce Lee proved otherwise. He was confident, unshakable, yet never aggressive without reason. Each strike he delivered, every movement he made, was calculated, precise, and intentional, a testament to skill married with wisdom. And sometimes, the most powerful force in a room doesn't even need to raise a hand. The dojo's transformation that evening was proof of this. Bruce Lee's mere presence, his calm demeanor, his quiet authority, and his mastery of self commanded respect without the need for theatrics. It wasn't the strikes that left the most lasting impression, it was the lesson behind them, the philosophy that spoke louder than any noise, punch, or kick could. Respect everyone, even when you don't know who they are. This was the most important lesson of all. The students who had mocked him, the challengers who had doubted him, even Master Nakamura, all had learned this. At some point, we all meet someone whose abilities, whose experience, or whose wisdom far exceed our assumptions. To belittle them, to underestimate them, is to risk missing a lesson that could change your life. Bruce Lee's demonstration wasn't about humiliation. It was about teaching respect, understanding, and humility in the face of greatness. Even those who had been arrogant, overconfident, or dismissive now carried a newfound awareness. They realized that respect is not something reserved for those who shout the loudest, dominate the strongest, or display the flashiest techniques. Respect is earned through actions, through consistency, and through the integrity of skill, not by boasting or belittling others. The spectators who had come expecting a simple display of martial arts found themselves witnesses to something far greater, a life lesson disguised as a fight. And the power of that lesson would stay with them long after the dojo had emptied. It wasn't fear they carried away, nor envy. It was understanding, clarity, and a reminder that true strength is often quiet, understated, and profound. Bruce Lee, walking toward the exit, left the room without a word. His movements were calm, fluid, almost meditative, as though nothing remarkable had happened. But everything had happened. The dojo, once filled with arrogance and noise, had been transformed into a space of humility, reflection, and true understanding. Each person present had seen what mastery looked like, and more importantly, what mastery meant. As the door closed behind him, the lessons lingered. Humility is strength, confidence does not require aggression, and respect is never optional. They were lessons that extended beyond martial arts, into every interaction, every challenge, and every aspect of life. And now, it's your turn. Type respect in the comments if you believe true power comes from humility. Think about the people in your life who may quietly carry strength and wisdom beyond what you can see. Remember to honor them, even if they don't demand attention, because sometimes the most powerful forces go unnoticed until the moment they reveal themselves. And don't forget, if you want to continue seeing stories that inspire, that teach life lessons through action, courage, and wisdom, like and subscribe. There are more legends, more teachings, and more moments of mastery waiting for you. Each story is a reminder that greatness is not always loud, that skill is not always flashy, and that the quiet, controlled, humble path often leaves the most lasting impact. Bruce Lee's night at the dojo had ended, but the lessons he left behind would echo far longer than any strike or kick. They would echo in the hearts of students, in the minds of challengers, and in anyone willing to listen. Because mastery is not just about defeating opponents, it's about lifting everyone around you, silently and profoundly, teaching lessons that transcend the fight itself. The dojo was silent. The students reflected. The spectators whispered. And in every heart, the truth was clear. The quietest, most controlled, and most humble force in the room is often the one that leaves the deepest mark.